Relics from the 60s. Shoot, the 60s are really important to me because there's a yearning for the simplicity and emotional richness. I would also mention what Eric had said last episode, which, your relic should be a great example of the times. And then I decided to pick two albums with unfortunate names.
That was your purpose to find ones with unfortunate names, or is that just something that happened?
That was something that happened in the process. I picked out two sort of randomly, and they both had unfortunate names.
I was surprised at how many records when I thought, oh, I'll bet that was recorded in the late 60s. Then I'd look at it and it was recorded in 70 or 71 or 72. So, but I dug deep and I found a couple of fairly obscure records that definitely struck me as documents of the times.
Woo!
Well, woo, which we just learned is a synonym for the new age.
Yep.
I'm glad you said that because the new age is the 60s in a sense and continuing on.
I thought it's when the 60s kind of deteriorated into sort of music on cassettes and sold
Mm-hmm.
on the back pages of magazines for personal meditation exercises.
I call that the winter of hate.
Okay.
Okay, so my first choice is unfortunately named Fapardokly, which was actually all the band members' last names put together to make this not a word. This is self-titled Fapardokly from 1967, and it is the project from Merrill Fankhauser, who came from a bunch of surf bands but had a wonderful voice. Although his content isn't always spot on, he has made some recordings here, like the music scene, that just encapsulate the early 60s. It's sort of pop psychedelia, but there's something else going on. I mean, although it is quality West Coast psychedelic rock, and it's very nicely recorded, even though it wasn't recorded by a major label. But it also mixes in 50s rock like Buddy Holly inspired and Roy Orbison. It's really at that apex of, yeah, 60s and 50s pop music turning into sort of psychedelic pop. So he also had bands like HMS Bounty and a band called Moo with Jeff Cotton from the Captain Beefheart's Magic Band. But this is the one that I picked because it really is stuck at that apex, the turning point of New Age consciousness. And the anthems here are fantastic. Some of the songs here just really nail it. And it's a really good band. And he's a great singer. So that would be good for anyone collecting, well, folk rock or summer of love kind of music. And second, I picked also from that era,
Oh yeah.
the Ultimate Spinach. This is their self-titled, so this is their first record, and unfortunately named Ultimate Spinach because evidently the singer had taken LSD and was alone in his room and started looking in the mirror. And he decided he would mark up his face with a bunch of green markers. And then he came to the conclusion that he was the ultimate spinach. So it's really representative of him through a LSD revelation. Although they're from Boston, they really have tried to acquire that San Francisco sound. It's got an anti-war concept, but you never know it. It's really dark, and I think his vocals are okay, but he's got a woman singer who's better. And when they sing together, they create this sort of harmony. It's almost like an organ effect, which makes the music more interesting than it would be. So I think the best part of it are these sinister hippie jams that have lots of audio effects like echo and phase shifter. It also has sitar and synthesizer, but it's dark. It's not pop at all, really. Yeah.
Ballad of the Hip Death Goddess,
Is that your
right?
favorite song?
I mean, that's dark.
Yeah, I mean,
Sounds dark.
Um,
here's a quote. Crystal sights are shattered and distorted, but reality's truth. I mean, that's not pop songwriting at all.
So what does
So,
it sound like?
sinister hippie jams, that's the best part of it. I
Huh.
mean, the songs are pretty good, but mostly because of the choral effects of the two singers singing together. And I guess it's probably their best record, although some people like the second record better and be great for psychedelic rock, but not pop. Yes.
well, you mentioned the individual I picked for my first record, Captain Beefheart. Got Captain Beefheart and his magic band here, Mirror Man, in the totally boss sort of gimmick cover.
Ooh, cool.
Is
Mm.
cool. And yeah, so this was all recorded, I think, in a single night in the mid 60s, like 1965. And they are already farther out on the astral plane than just about anybody would get for the next, few decades. I mean, these are really out there jams, really long. I think the shortest song on the album is 10 minutes. You can hear how blues, from the Mississippi Delta and elsewhere and deep in the South and the sort of murky, bubbly primordial swamps of America, filter here under the influence of LSD turns into the music of the 60s. And whereas, people like the Rolling Stones or whatever were listening to the blues and making, doing these kind of increasingly skilled knockoffs of them. Here, they were going in a totally different direction. They were trying to connect with the kind of with the sort of weird, I don't know, roots Americana. Great lyrics of a totally associative nature. Great drumming, great jamming on the guitar. Everything here is just like the term freaking out refers to in the best possible way. This kind of has the violent shock of just the initial surge of the counterculture before it became before I don't know, like, Mama Cass showed up on TV and the Smothers Brothers started commenting on the Vietnam War. Item number two is also from LA. It's also from that time. This is more like 50s music with a really kind of bad attitude, sort of, and as you'll see from their hairstyles, this is kind of like well, what the Ramones would do 10 years after this. But just check out these dudes with their bob haircuts, black attire, and if memory serves, black gloves. The Music Machine, and led by this guy Thomas, I think his name was, no, Simon Bonnewell, who made a couple of good solo records too. But the Music Machine weren't around for long. They were there in the mid 60s, yeah, sporting the requisite bowl haircuts, but with a lot more attitude. Talk Talk is a song about being universally hated by everyone. So, and it's really got a very sort of aggressive drive to it. Um, I think there's a video on YouTube of them performing it at a zoo, but really it's about high school, I think, or any kind of similarly claustrophobic environment. Yeah, this is an incel anthem. So it's a punk record, 10 years early. I also think that a lot of this was sampled for the first Cypress Hill album, or not a lot of it, but some of it was. There's some really neat sort of transitions here that lend themselves to sampling. Yeah, this is kind of the other side of the Captain Beefheart equation. These are the other losers who are more the metalheads, and less of the drug taking crowd.
So my first record is from 1968. And if you were just to look at this album cover and I asked you what year it was from, you might have guessed 1968, I would suspect. So this is by Pat Martino, guitarist and jazz guitarist. And it's got a long title, Baina, The Clear Evidence, and then in parentheses, a psychedelic excursion through the magical mysteries of the Quran. Okay, there's a lot going on in this. So Pat Martino, prior to this record, or maybe the one right before it, was a jazz guitarist known mainly for like he was known for being like a soul jazz guy. So, not exactly avant-garde. And definitely not psychedelic. But he started to change in the late 60s. So this record, even though the liner notes stress, just going to read this one sentence because it's kind of great. It cannot be shouted too loudly that this is not a routine blowing date or a superficial capitalization of the current Ravi Shankar fad. I beg to differ. I think this is a capitalization on the Ravi Shankar fad, but it's good. This essentially sounds like a soul jazz guitarist stretching out a little bit over and improvising over, there's a tabla player, there's a tambura, in addition to, a second guitar, saxophone, flute, Richard Davis on bass, who's a great bassist, and became known for doing his own avant-garde stuff a little bit later on, I think. So, it does have all the trappings of late 60s, exotic hippie fare. And it doesn't sound like a soul jazz record, but it does sound like a jazz record. I don't typically think of Islam and psychedelia together.
Sufism
Yeah, I guess Sufism, right?
would be my guess, but
Oh yeah. He was probably just thinking about Sufism, right? Anyway, cool album. So, and definitely worth a listen if you like this stuff. Second record is probably a little more obscure. Sam Gopal. What's it called? Escalator. So I think this is notable mainly because Lemmy was on it. This was recorded in 1969. So in terms of Lemmy's career trajectory, this would have been after he roadied for Hendrix, but before he started Hawkwind, or rather before he joined Hawkwind, and long before he started Motorhead. So he was basically kind of a hippie at this point, I guess. I think Sam Gopal, that's like the leader of the group. He played the tablas. So this is, yeah, and there's no drums on this record except on one song. So it's a curiously muted affair, but it's muted in a way that allows for the lead guitarist to just solo all over the fucking place. This guy is like losing his damn mind on a bunch of these songs, and it's fantastic. It's a really unique sound. And I think on the last song, or near, it's on the second side anyway, Lemmy actually wrote and sings like this rather pretty ballad, which is, I don't know. I don't think he ever did that again. So
but that little tiny flower was always in him,
yeah,
just until the
it was
end.
there. It was there. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot, there's a lot of interesting stuff on this album, and it's definitely worth a listen. So That's my two.
Oh, they even have their sort of iconic black leather gloves, turning up the volume to 11 there. Yeah.
Yeah. Think of Spinal Tap.
Right. Smell the glove. Thank you. Thank you. Hot throbbing nights. This is pure freak power.